Let's do some quick introductions. So, title of the panel here is 2020 Vision. Sorry about that. What will mobility look like in 3 years? And I think we can get a lot of conversation happening around this topic. But let's quickly have the panel introduce themselves, and let's go ahead and start with you, Ian.
Cool. Hi, everybody. My name's Ian Broom. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Fliplet. Should I explain what Fliplet does? Or?
Sure.
Okay. So Fliplet is a product that makes it really, really easy for companies to build and launch enterprise mobile apps.
And Aki?
Aki Lewis, I'm the MD of Mobiline. I'm sure some of you will know what we do, so I won't go into too much detail.
Good afternoon, it's Peter Gall, Solutions Architect at Qualcomm. Qualcomm look after best-of-breed wireless and mobility solutions, and I've been in the mobile industry through MDM, EMM, and into cybersecurity for the last few years.
And I can promise you that the four of us will keep you going through the afternoon if you don't interrupt, so let's get some hands going at some point. But we'll kick it off with maybe this year. Before we even start looking forward, we're now halfway through the second quarter. Are you guys seeing any trends in mobility starting to establish? Something new that's maybe taking root, or perhaps something that is now starting to be a glimmer in someone's eye that you're starting to see everybody in the industry start to drive towards?
For me and for my business, it's Windows 10. That's the big thing that's happening at the moment.
Is it just the operating system, or is it something interesting about the ecosystem around that?
I think it's just the operating system. The adoption is happening later than we thought. The second half of this year, it seems to be. The other thing is the amount of stuff that's happening around applications and how enterprise data is being accessed for applications. Those are the two really big things that we're seeing as a dynamic, and Ian will comment on some of those, but yeah, those are the two big things for us.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm seeing quite a lot of things around MDM or EMM, and this mobility is becoming the ecosystem. I'm seeing a lot of things being able to be plugged in to that ecosystem. That is just growing on a daily basis, be it the mobile threat defense side of things that we've heard about, be it data loss and leakage solutions being added in, single sign-on, even extending that out then into wireless in your network and being able to have some sort of like NAC type analysis and posture-based security in there as well. And that ecosystem, leveraging the EMM, of course, as the full compliance, remediation, enforcement engine, that is certainly growing, and I see that moving throughout the year.
And I think the key change that we're noticing is we always assumed that when we started working with enterprise that there would be this beautiful strategy in place and that we would just plug into that and enable our organizations or our clients to do whatever they want with mobile apps. We were wrong. And for the last couple of years, it's basically been line of business coming to us and purchasing. And now we're starting to find that IT are coming to us and saying, guys, we've built a bunch of apps, and this isn't sustainable. And we notice that other parts of the business are building apps with you and they haven't even spoken to us about it. Can you talk to us about what you're doing with those guys, and maybe we can come up with a bit of a strategy. So, and of course, we're also finding the number of questions we're getting asked proactively instead of reactively about security is increasing. Again, I think because line of business have gone off and done their own things historically in relation to getting apps created, IT has kind of said, well, look, you didn't come and ask us, so we're not accepting responsibility. And I think that it's kind of shifting now. IT are becoming a lot more proactive in saying, tell us about your single sign-on capabilities. Tell us about, the kind of certifications and compliance that you have. So that's a big change.
I think you're right. IT are now trying to reassert themselves and show their relevance within a company. They've just had it taken away from them with all the shadow IT before, and now they say, hey, we're still here, we can add value.
And as they start to kind of build that unified strategy for the enterprise, are you finding that mobility is driving it, or mobility is kind of along for the ride?
I think mobility has become an equalizer within organizations. So previously, where we were having conversations with CTOs and CIOs, effectively operations now are involved, HR and other departments, because everybody's got an app that does something for someone. And how you go about putting that ecosystem together, those applications, the technology that sits behind it, it's further integrations, and how you kind of build on top of all of that going forward as well. That strategic piece that's always missing. I think that's one of the biggest drivers, is that equalization across the enterprise, that everybody now is involved in the strategy. The strategy isn't the sole domain of a single CTO or a single CIO. It's the domain of everybody. So.
We've been hearing a lot lately from analysts and even from customers that it's time to go beyond the EMM. It's kind of the quote that I've been hearing a lot lately. Do you think that that plugs in with what Peter was saying around kind of the ecosystem that's being built up around the EMM and now it's additional functionality? Or does it have something to do with this leveled playing field where now you're bringing in lines of business, you're bringing in others that developed apps, and now you have a couple of different management paradigms that you have to figure out how to bring together under one roof?
I think that beyond EMM means that EMM is slowly starting to be considered mainstay infrastructure. It isn't the periphery piece that I used to draw on a diagram on a whiteboard 20 years ago where it was over there somewhere and this was the mainstream of architecture. And I think that's what people are trying to understand is how does EMM fit into the kind of what we do every single day with our devices within an organization and sometimes when we get home. And I think beyond EMM is that coming together of all those other pieces. It's like, how do I drag that old infrastructure into this new stuff? And then all the associated stuff that goes with that. You know, we talked to her about this morning about integrations that Wandera do around Splunk and stuff, and you know that kind of network analysis. We've heard about data and data analysis, and how does that kind of play into it? And the whole fad around IoT, and how is that going to figure? So all of those things are starting to come together. And I think what people mean by beyond EMM is what else. EMM is kind of melting away. What's been left behind is what used to be the norm. So.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things have gone now from, you know, we had websites that then became web-enabled and mobile-enabled, right? And then, you know, people have then gone to a mobile first. They're starting to design things to actually go down the mobile route. And now we're seeing, like, the emergence coming through of mobile-only companies. You know, everything is just purely focused on that, and they don't even look to deploy some of their functionality out to other types of platforms, such as web. You know, everything's done through apps and mobility, first off.
We've got a question here.
Yeah, I think for me, EMM traditionally has been around mobile devices, small devices. Do you think that actually over the next 2 or 3 years things are going to change where your traditional domain model for PCs and laptops is going to completely disappear? And so, you know, you'll have something like Azure AD just for the authentication, and then EMM will sit on every device.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mentioned Windows 10, and that's a big driver in my business. It will certainly contribute to our business by the end of this year. At the moment, that infrastructure needs to be domain joined. It won't need to be within the next 6 months to a year. You start to move away from domain joined. You'll be managing on the fly, especially in the old architecture, the PC architecture. You'll be able to put things in place where something can be added whilst people are in situ. You can change settings while people are on the fly. Those things will certainly happen. But I also think the 2 other pieces are really coming into play. One is that the devices are essentially going to melt away in the sense that the way that we access enterprise information will be through applications. In essence, the applications on multiple platforms will operate in all the same way. So Evernote will acts the same way on virtually every single platform, virtually the same way. So that means that if you're using Evernote, you don't really care essentially about the device. That becomes peripheral. In enterprise, certainly it becomes peripheral. I think the other thing is that we are seeing a massive growth in identity and identity management. That things will be built around identities, and I think that you know that's how that will then play out. But going back to your point around any form factor, any device about being domain joined, I think that it's actually being pushed away from the domains, and it will be based around identity instead. And Azure obviously does play into that. So.
I think just on that topic, we have lots of customers coming to us asking about single sign-on and kind of misunderstanding that what they're actually wanting is a sign-on solution that extends beyond their organization out to their customers or out to members of the public. Just recently, we launched a cybersecurity app with a big London-based law firm. Security was obviously pretty hot on their mind because of what they were asking people to put into it were their cybersecurity plans. So they really wanted the app to be secure. We spent quite a long time having to kind of work with the client and educate them to make sure that they understood that like what they use inside their organization doesn't necessarily translate to outside their organization. That quite frankly scared the crap out of the IT security guys because they were like, hang on, everything I know I can't rely on now. I can't measure it against the same standards. So hang on, what do we do? And we ended up working with them to do research into kind of solutions that would sit out in the public that would analyze the app security. That was, yeah, that kind of caused quite a stumbling block in the project. We ended up launching the app in case anybody was worried, but yeah, it was pretty evident that their internal security guys knew a lot about internal kind of corporate security and not much about how to secure things that were going outside the organization. So I see that as a big area going beyond EMM. I think that's what it means for us.
And just touching on that, what are you guys seeing in terms of awareness across your customers, those you interact with in the industry, when it comes to security? So this law firm obviously had a very big driver for security in the app, but in general, it still seems like there's no clear ownership for security threat defense when it comes to mobile.
No, not really. You know, I think mobility, as we know, has been very much consumer-led, right? It always has been, and that's then moved slowly into the enterprise, and they're trying to catch up with how our end users actually want to get there. You know, I mean, take, for example, look on Google's website, look at their Android Enterprise or Android for Work as it was then. There's an advert, full page on their website saying, take this to work. Go and tell your company you want this because this helps you work on your mobile device and keep your data safe. So I think trying to educate the end users, the consumers, is very key on this, or we're never going to get that message of security and mobile threats actually into the enterprise at the end level. You know, the threats have increased. We've heard many times this morning, right? The number of threats we're seeing on mobile, it's on the increase. You know, we've had Xcode Ghost, Slembunk, Hummingbird. You know, there's a whole bunch of them that are out there. You know, literally thousands. Some of those have been consumer-based and then have eventually morphed into attacking an enterprise app to try and get a password. You know, it's come down to trying to get this, we heard again earlier, it was part one of that 7 steps of cyber kill chain, the reconnaissance section. Let's get that data off the mobile, it's the soft target. We can now use that in another place and go and attack, like through a spear phishing attack. And until we get people to be more security aware, we're never going to get there from the consumer end. I mean, I'll give you another example, really. There's you've seen things, text that come through from your carrier, text that maybe come through from Uber, and it says, hey, you know, this is your, click on here, it's your bill for your latest Uber ride. Right? If you use Uber, you go, heck, I didn't take that, click the link. A tiny URL, a bit.ly, you'd have no idea where it's going. And that's what we need to educate the consumers to do to get this into the enterprise.
My biggest concern around security is social profiling. And attacks based on social profiling. I know that there's been some about it. I think we've got something this afternoon about it. But also enterprise profiling. Now, you asked a question about who owns security. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier, the equity across an organization now with the applications and threats being application-based means that security becomes the domain of everybody, which means, it also means that you have 20 different strategies, which makes it tough for the enterprise, great for us to sit there and kind of work that out, and for some of the organisations in this room. But it's going to get complex, and enterprise profiling is certainly coming. Yeah. You target a specific bunch of people within an organisation, and you go after those bunch of people in the organisation. So.
Yeah.
I actually think where security is going is probably more around 2 or possibly even 3-factor auth, because I think people just don't trust. I think as we get more common 2-factor auth, I was literally sharing with the security team yesterday an article that basically was saying, organizations are coming out and saying, don't trust SMS. And it's like, oh shit, how much have we all got based around SMS as our 2-factor auth? And then, it's moving back to tokens, which of course is what most of us would have been used to, and then we kind of evolved away from tokens. So, and I think what's really interesting is that we, as a kind of a solution provider, we're ending up just basically building security systems and then advising clients, like, these are your options, these are the pros and cons, pick the one that you think is right for you, and kind of having a suite that they can select from. And I think that this is kind of the catch with all security. Like, we can obviously all jack up the security quite easily, with tools like MobileIron, just change some policies, and then wait for users to just complain bitterly. We've just won a big piece of work with a client who moved away from a really, really, really secure other vendor because, quote, the client didn't like changing their password every 6 weeks. So they came to us where we don't impose that level of security. And I was like, this is a weird way to win a client. I mean, I'll take it, but I'm not going to completely let them off the hook without having to at least have a discussion about security, because clearly they had it in a secure system for a reason. So yeah, I think security is a really interesting one. It will continue to evolve.
So as we look over the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years, the big, I think, paradigm shift for the industry has been the move away from BlackBerry platforms to really the full power of the internet in your pocket. So as you look over the next 3 years, what do you think the big paradigm shifts are going to be? Obviously, we've kind of made that jump now with data just being that thing that we feel is at our disposal. We don't really, I think, care too much about the speeds anymore because they're good enough. What's next?
Interesting. I think coverage, certainly within the UK, coverage will drive that. I think coverage isn't quite there. I think that processing power and what you can do on the devices. I do think there will be a drift back to some kind of larger form factor. I think that will have to happen. I think that ultimately we've all tried to work on these smaller devices and try to do things with them. Essentially they don't work. I think that integration is certainly going to become tighter. How that device communicates with the outside world and how it presents information is going to change. And I think that the cloud is going to be exponential. I really do. The growth of that and where you put the data is just going to be amazing. I think a lot of data analysis is one thing we may have missed is the data analytics piece. It's going to grow enormously, or micro data certainly is going to grow amazingly. The analysis of every transaction, every key press, every interaction, and how people get from A to B and those processes are really going to be big business.
I think with Google Home, Alexa, a lot of the other voice-activated assistants, we're already seeing the interface change. Yeah. Like you may not need a form factor in front of you that you need to actually interface with to get work done anymore.
Yeah. We're seeing clients push really hard on basically just having one solution that works everywhere. They don't really want to be making decisions. Most clients, they glaze over if you mention, well, is this going to be iOS and Android? And that you can see them just shut down. They just don't care. They just expect that like when they get something created or delivered on these devices, it's the same for everybody, and that everybody, like you pick your platform and you understand the difference, not that IT or the people delivering the solution have to understand the difference for you. And that's basically dragged us. We originally started out as mobile only, thinking, well, that's the weak area, right? That's where the big opportunity. And clients basically said, you have to get into web. And we were like, but why? And they said, you have to get into desktop. And we were like, really? And they're like, yeah, because I'm coming to you and I'm getting this amazing thing built, and then I'm having to go over there and pay somebody else to build it again in another platform. Like, why can't I just pay you a little bit more and you build it all in one platform? And we were like, okay, we thought you had all the other platforms covered. We didn't think that you'd be looking to change so easily. But actually, I think that, yeah, like, in the end, we kind of went, well, why add more friction to the buying process?
Yeah, I think it was mentioned earlier this morning that mobile has really introduced this whole consumerized usability expectation. Yeah. And we all just expect it to be easy and consistent no matter what the platform is, and that's probably driving a lot of those decisions. We had a question over here.
I'm just curious to see what the panel thinks about the market. Obviously, there are hundreds of firms in enterprise mobility. Obviously, you've got this whole wave in SaaS around productivity and collaboration. What people call digital sprawl in some respects. There's just a lot of companies out there. Equally, you've got some really big giants that say, come with us all the way. I'd just be curious to get your steer or what you guys think as to how you see the market shaping out.
Well, yeah, I've seen people generally go for best of breed. As you say, thousands of vendors out there. All the small ones are trying to gain market share. A lot of the larger ones are buying up the smaller ones to add and get development functionality very quickly and jump ahead of their competitors, expand their portfolio. But certainly when it comes down to buying, we certainly don't see people just going for those big behemoths, going all Google or all Microsoft down that route. I'm actually seeing people come in and say, actually, I'd like a little bit of a mix. I'll use that as part of my backbone, but I want these best of breed solutions that are proven time and time again that they are good at the bit that they do.
I hate it when Nick asks a question because it's going to be complicated. I agree actually with Peter. I think that what I've seen for the last 10, 12 years, as I've started a number of organizations, is we've tended to buy the best of breed technology on our ability to pay for that technology. So we picked, in some cases, the organizations that we started, we picked Google Mail, we picked Amazon Cloud Storage, we've, picked up, Dropbox, we picked up various technologies that, fit our needs, and we built our organization around those chosen technologies. I think that the problem is, or the problem that some organizations will have is that the key reason for being may melt away in all the other bits and pieces that you do. So some of our competitors, as good as they are, and they are very good, often their message is lost, and that mobility message certainly will be lost in other technologies that they're trying to push, those that make money essentially. This is a long-term vision for a lot of organizations in mobility. You've got to stick at this for a long time to make money. Essentially, that's our point, and you got to give it that distance. But I think that going back to Peter's point, I think best of breed, absolutely. There's a huge amount of competition, but every single year, as you well know, we see 20 organizations drop off, and we see 10 join, or 30 drop off, and 25 join, and it just happens every single year. That Gartner quadrant never becomes smaller. With CCS's own data, is exactly the same. The players in that space never get less. They always kind of stay about the same. There's always somebody who's got a speciality in this.
It's exciting. We got a question over here on the...
Yeah, my question was around IoT, and to what extent you think the existing vendors or players in enterprise mobility are going to extend into that area. A lot of people are talking about risks of security in IoT. We've seen in the App Store and the app developers, even with Apple in the middle on iOS, that bad code gets through. A lot of people are very pessimistic about poster makers thinking about building in security. A lot of people pointing to some of these technologies taking 2-3 years in the production line, and the security world changing so rapidly by the time it's released, it's not secure. To what extent do you worry about security in IoT and think that vendors in mobility are going to have something to say about it?
I really do think there's so much hype around IoT. I think that's pretty felt in the room. I mean, what does my washing machine want to tell me that I don't know about my washing machine, right? And I can understand my washing machine talking to something else in my house about, when to turn itself on, possibly. Me managing my house, yeah, that works. So I'm kind of dubious about the whole thing anyway. I'm not sure that security is going to be a huge issue unless you start putting the machinery into the device. And I can't see many people doing that. I think it's more important to the likes of the manufacturers to collect that data, which they do at the moment, but they collect it through the human interface. It's me phoning them up or typing something into a website saying your machine doesn't work. But yeah, I'm a bit dubious. I mean, having said that, as an organization, we are looking at IoT massively, but we're looking at it from the data perspective because we believe there's a huge amount of data that can be collected to show patterns of usage, to show interaction with machines and how we interact with them and to get those workflows sorted out. Again, I'm not sure that's really home-based, but I think it's, I think it's very, very hyped. Very hyped.
I think IoT is kind of ubiquitous now. I mean, we touched on voice devices, Alexa, Google Home, blah, blah, blah. How many other things have you guys put into your homes in the last year that connects to the internet? That's all IoT, right? And it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So I don't know, I think it's just there, and it is going to create problems. None of us are going to stop using it because we want the toaster. We can say, make toast now from our phone without having to walk across the kitchen. Or Alexa, turn my toaster on, or whatever it is. So if it gives us that tiny little bit of benefit, we'll carry the risk. But I agree that it's going to create problems.
How'd you get the bread in the toaster?
I don't know. That's where I have the robot.
Yeah. So there's a question over there,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yes, so we're starting to see the larger form factor devices become SIM-enabled. Do you think they're going to become as prolific as mobile phones, where everybody has one? And if so, how long do you think that might take?
Well, I mean, just on Windows 10, for example, I expect by the end of this year, certainly Lenovo and HP are bringing out SIM-enabled tablets. So I think that will happen. I think that it's only a matter of time before we lose SIM cards altogether, and connectivity is ubiquitous in every device. I mean, why wouldn't you have that? I think it's happening. I think it's going to be really, really quick. It won't be long term.
That convergence is definitely happening. You know, there is that mind shift now that IT departments are having to think of a laptop as not a laptop, right? We just treat it. It's on. It is a mobile device. It just has a different interaction. It has a full-size keyboard and a mouse and a bigger screen, right? But it's exactly the same. Do we need to admin join it? Do we need to do all of these things? No. You know, let's think about it. We don't have that on a mobile device. Do we need to consider that on laptops? There is a different way of managing these now, not by using EMM, going beyond EMM and doing that. You know, Gartner call it unified device management, and they're bringing out reports and quadrants around that. Yeah, just treat it the same as you would a mobile device. Over-the-air deployment, instant configuration and enforcement on that.
I can see the wheels are turning. The hands have been shooting up over the last few minutes. I think lots of really good conversation here, guys. I want to say thank you. We got a break now, so please pick their brains out in the hallway. I'll let Joel say a few words, but thanks very much.